Hey, I'm Spencer Powell, and welcome back to Growth Mode, where we are all a work in progress. In today's video, I'm going to walk you through how to create a budget step by step. I'm going to show you how to build it starting from scratch. I'll give you a template to start with, and I'll show you exactly how to personalize it for your own situation. I'll also show you a few areas that people get tripped up on and how to work through those. And we'll also break down how to maintain the budget and then adjust it over time as you earn more or earn less at different periods of your life, and so that you will be able to use this as a living, breathing document. And this is absolutely one of the most foundational, critical skills that you can learn, because if you can't manage $100, you can't manage $1,000, and you can't manage $1 million. So learn this skill on how to budget, and this will set you up for all areas as you move forward and start getting into more complex areas of personal finance. So let's dive right in. All right, guys, let's dive in. This is a topic I really enjoy. I love the process of budgeting. I've been working on my own kind of system for probably about 7 or 8 years. My wife and I do this together. We've kind of co-built the system, and it's worked really well for us. And we've added a couple of little tricks of the trade and little nuances that I think will help you navigate some of those areas that you tend to get tripped up over. And so what I want to do in this video is walk you through a sample, and then I'll show you how to build your categories and personalize the budget for yourself and your own experience. And then I'll show you kind of a sample month and how to track along with that. And then we'll go over some cool components. We call them the carryovers, and a few other things in terms of maintaining this over time and then adjusting it over time. So at the end of this video, you should be able to basically take the spreadsheet, dive into your own finances, create your own budget, and start tracking along and moving forward. So let's dive right in and look at this sample. So what I want to do is take a sample kind of dual income scenario. Could be married, not married, but you're treating this as a collective environment where you're saying, hey, we're a team here, and we've got a couple of incomes. Obviously, if you're running solo, you're just going to use your number in terms of income. And so that you can do this whether you have 1 income, 2 incomes, 3 incomes, 4 incomes. Really, at the end of the day, we're going to break it down into one number that is just all flowing into this. So in this scenario, we're going to just say we have Jake is earning $50,000 a year, and Emily is also earning $50,000 a year. This will give us some nice, easy round numbers to work with. So total income of $100,000 per year. And then I think this is pretty close to their effective tax rate. So those taxes will come out. But at the end of the day, the easiest way to do this in terms of budgeting is actually to take your paycheck number. And so you'll basically work this out to taking your paycheck and multiplying that by 2 or 4. So if you get paid weekly, you're going to multiply that by 4. And if you get paid every other week, which I think is pretty common, you'll multiply it by 2. And what this does is it actually gives you the number that is coming into your bank account, which is the cash that you're going to have available to you. So a lot of people will take whatever they're making gross. So if you're making $50,000 a year, whatever that paycheck comes in, it's not $50,000 a year divided by 52 weeks or 26 if you get paid every other week. And so if you just look at your pay stub and then multiply it by either 2 or 4, and then add that to significant other, if you have one, then you're basically going to arrive at the number that you have to work with. So this is the first step in just trying to figure out, like, what do we have to work with? So this is going to be your number. You've already had withholdings taken out, and all the other stuff that you see on your paycheck, all those line items, those have already come out. And chances are, if you're contributing, if you have a 401k or something like that through your employer, then that would have already come out. We're not going to worry about all of that. We're just going to keep this really simple. What is the paycheck? Multiply it. Now, there's something already baked into this that's super cool. And I encourage you to just follow this model because it'll add some padding for you. So if you get paid every week, and you take that number, multiply it by 4, what you'll notice is that over the course of the year, maybe you get paid on Thursdays. Well, over the course of the year, there are going to be 4 months where there's actually 5 Thursdays. And so you get paid 5 times. And so if you look at that, you'll actually get an extra paycheck every quarter, basically, 4 times a year. And so if you don't budget around that and you don't factor that in, you just say, hey, I'm just multiplying it by 4, then you will actually have those as extra savings. And we call them secret savings. My wife and I do. And that turns out to be about 7% savings rate. So even if you miss your budget completely and you don't hit any of your saving and investing categories that we'll get to here in a second, you can actually still save 7% if you just follow this model. Same thing if you get paid every 2 weeks. The way it falls, there's about 4 of those extra checks that come, or maybe it's 2. But the way it works out mathematically is the same, basically 7%. I get paid weekly. And so that's the times 4. So anyway, now you've got your number that you're working with. The next thing we're going to do is figure out categories. So that's step 2. What are the things that we need to figure out in terms of where these dollars are going? And if you haven't watched the how or why to create a budget, I talk about an intentional spending plan. You'll see that every dollar has a place, whether it's saving or investing or housing or food or whatever it is. We want to put every single dollar somewhere with intention. So that's the categories piece. Then we'll walk through entering some actual data. So that's how you actually start getting this going. You'll put in real numbers, and then you'll track the current month. And then obviously you'll do this ongoing, which we'll talk about. But those are the first 4 steps in terms of getting started. So I'd encourage you right now to just quickly pause the video, look at your paycheck, and depending on your frequency, multiply it by 2 or 4, and then you will arrive at the number that you're working with. Obviously, factor in a significant other if that's relevant to you, and come up with that number. All right, so let's move on to categories. So in terms of categories, I always like to start with the saving, investing categories first. And you can see I've filled in some of them for this example here. So you've got your total, and the way I arrived at this for this example is I took the total, which is the 6640, which is this number from sheet 1, and then I multiplied that by 20%. So we're saying, hey, we're going to work at saving and investing 20%. That gets you to $1,328 per month, and that leaves 80% for expenses here. Obviously, that number is just a sample. Use what makes sense for you. I like the 20% number, 20% plus ideally, I think is a great target to shoot for. Obviously, you're going to have to adjust that up or down based on your personal goals, your risk profile, all those types of things. So as you start to put numbers into these different categories, 300 towards kind of deep savings, 300 towards, again, paying the mortgage down, that may or may not apply to you, 300 towards stocks, 300 towards crypto, and then other investments. We developed this category for things like buying books or training courses or investing in like a fitness trainer or coach online where you're going to pay for a program or something, but basically investing into yourself. And so those are the different categories that we've developed. And then you're going to go into your expense categories. And then you'll see a bunch of them here. And these are just to give you a place to start. They've worked really well for us, but obviously you can add and delete categories that don't apply. And so the first thing you want to do is start up here with this and prioritize this. Say, hey, we're going to commit to 20% or whatever it is. And then boom, you start there. And what that does is it enables you to look at all of these things. Some of these are necessities and some of these are wants. And so you can flex them around. And what people typically do is they start with this and they go, well, that's kind of what I spent. And then you end up spending all of it here and there's nothing left. So if you start with your saving and investing goals, then you're forced here to say, okay, this is really the only number I have to work with. So I'm going to make it work. So if we just were to go down and fill these in, obviously you're going to fill in your own numbers here. Cable might be $80, phone, 100, gym could be 100, Spotify, food, you might be spending 500, eating out, another 500, shopping, travel, car. It depends, obviously, if you pay for it in cash or if you have a payment on that. And then if you don't have a payment, or whether you have a payment, you're still going to have maintenance. So you would put both of those into the car category. We'll just say 250 there. House, typically this is like house items. Obviously this isn't mortgage or anything like that. So whether you're renting or you own, this is just stuff that you buy around the house. We'll say 150, 300 for gifts, gas 150, entertainment, dry cleaning, $50, beauty, health. Dues is usually things like credit card annual fees, or like Amazon Prime or anything like that. So typically that's not too bad on a monthly basis, might be $50 a month. Parking might be 50, and then miscellaneous, you might be, at $30 or something like that. So what you want to do is start putting in your actual numbers as best you can. Some of them will be easy. So like mortgage, HOA, or this could be rent, utilities. Utilities, I typically like to just pull an average for, pull 3 months and see what the average was. A lot of these will be fixed, things like cable and phone and gym, those shouldn't alter too much. And then you'll have kind of these other ones that you can really play around with, like food and eating out and shopping and travel. So in this scenario, I just punched in a bunch of random numbers and I had 87 left. So at this point, I really have a couple of options. One would be, hey, this is great. This is how I'm living right now. I like this scenario. I'm going to put these $87 up here into a saving and investing category. Or what you'll find is like, oh, actually, we tend to spend a little bit more on food or whatever it is. And so you could add it to that and say, put 587 here. And then the goal is to get both of these numbers zeroed out so that you are spending every dollar, whether that's on a saving investment category or an expense that you need. And when you first start, you're going to punch in all these numbers, and then you're going to move over and you're going to set your budget. And I'll show you the January field here, and we can go through how you put all those numbers in. But then you're just going to have to adjust it based on reality. I think it took my wife and I maybe 2 or 3 years to kind of really dial in all the numbers exactly, because each year something would come up and go, oh yeah, I forgot about that. I forgot the budget for that. And so you end up having to take it away from something else and kind of make it work, or it comes out of savings and then you don't make that mistake again. So do the best you can to be accurate. The goal here isn't to wish these numbers were different unless you can force them to be different, like entertainment and travel and shopping. Those are all, want categories. And so you can flex within those. And some of these other ones are a little bit tougher to control. Obviously, we can always shop our insurance and try to minimize our expenses in certain areas if we want to. But a lot of these down here tend to be a little bit more flexible. So once you've got everything entered, then you're going to actually come over to the first month, and wherever you're starting, you can just modify this. And then I just clone this sheet and delete all the data out of it as I go month to month. So you'll have a sheet for every single month of the year. And then you can just copy this document year over year. So once we've pulled everything over, you'll have a budget, and that is this number. And so we'll have our income, our savings categories, and then the budget. And so the budget is based around all of those expenses. And so if you look at what this is adding up, it's adding up all of these items here: miscellaneous, parking, shopping, gifts. You'll see these numbers are different from the categories because I just entered those randomly. And so you'll see something like food and eating out, 400 and 200. And then we've got car plus house. That was actually something we ended up splitting out into their own categories. Car has its own and house has its own. But again, you can modify these to be whatever you want them to be. Insurance, utilities. So once you've got them built in here and you just put all those budget numbers from the category sheet over into these spots here, it'll do the math here and it'll show you, hey, this is what your budget is for the month. And then this is where you're actually at for the month. And this is what you have left. And so as you're going through the month, you can update this. I would recommend weekly if you're first starting out, so you can get your finger on the pulse And as you get down to the wire towards the end of the month, you'll be able to see, oh gosh, we only have $20 left or $15 left. And so, my wife and I would, a lot of times those last few days of the month, we would, just make scrambled eggs for dinner because, hey, we ran out of, food and eating out budget for the month. Even though we have tons of money in savings, the point is to stay committed to the plan and what you're doing, because otherwise stuff comes up always at the end of the month. And you end up chipping away into your saving and investing goals. And so that's why it's always important to set those first, because those should be based on your long-term goals and where you're trying to go. And then now we're in the weeds on the granular day-to-day. And so when you get to the end of the month, that's kind of where the difference is made, because if you cheat right at the end of the month, you're going to blow into your savings goals. And now you're starting to cheat into your future planning. So I would highly recommend updating this weekly as you kind of build this cadence so that you can stay under budget or right at budget month over month. Okay, so let's talk about something that we developed called Carryover Categories. And this is a really powerful tool for things that are irregular. And insurance is a great example of this. So if we go over here and look at insurance, in this instance, $271 per month was the budgeted item, but this month there was $579. And that's because this esurance is a twice a year payment. And so the cash comes out today, when you pay it, but it's really good for 6 months. And so we call these carryover categories, where you're saying, hey, this averages out to be $271 per month, but we know every month is going to be very different. Most months will be really low, will be under the $271. But then a couple times a year, we're going to have these big payments because we're paying them on those structures, whether it's quarterly or annually or semi-annually. And so it'll look like we're way out of whack. And so the way it works is this month, when we look at what is being pulled out, we're actually only we're basically saying we spent $271, even though our cash out was $579. And the reason we're doing that is because we're saying, hey, over the year, this is going to average out. So we don't want to say that we were over budget, because we weren't necessarily. And the way we track along with that over the years, we have this carryover and savings tab. And so if we come over to this tab and we look at insurance, basically we've figured out the annual number and the monthly number. So $271 per month is $3,200 per year on insurance. And then every month we'll put in these numbers as they come in. So yes, $579 for January was way over. But then we're going to be under, and then we're over. And then these will most likely all be under for the rest of the year. And so you'll see what you have left for the year. And so as long as you're tracking along with this month over month, you can see, at the halfway point, hey, are we about on track here? Are we about do we have about half left? And then you can start to spot, maybe areas that you're spending a little bit too much and you need to rein it back for the next half of the year. Or maybe you're way under and you're saying, hey, we can reallocate that, or we'll just wait till the end of the year and we'll see what's left. And then we can always save that or invest that, or cover something that we didn't expect to come up. So these categories are the ones that we've identified that we've found work really well. Gifts is one. We have birthdays, in certain months, there's like 5 people that have a birthday. And so it just is going to be all over the board month to month. Entertainment is things like concerts or events or anything like that. And so that tends to be pretty up and down. Dues and subscriptions, same thing, like annual fees like Costco or Amazon Prime, stuff like that. Beauty, health, a lot of these we've just found they're all over the board. And so pick categories that work for you, that you think, hey, this should be a category or a carryover category. There's a couple that we decided that would be really bad to make carryovers. And one of them was shopping. And because you tend to you'll set the budget at 150. And then one month you maybe be at 175 or 200. And so you'll make it a carryover and you're like, oh, that's fine. We've got some left. But what we found is that towards the end of the year, you just run out of that item. So it was better to set the bar and just say, this is a monthly thing. We can't go over it. and it's not going to be a carryover. So just something to think about. Don't make everything a carryover. Just be strategic around those items. It's usually the things that have the big fluctuations, or kind of like we talked about with insurance, those payments that are pretty irregular. So as you get this going, you're just going to start putting in all of your transactions. And we just run as much as we can off the credit cards. You'll just enter all those things, and we double check with receipts. Don't forget, if you pay cash for stuff, to enter that. So you're basically looking at your bank account, your credit cards, and then receipts, and then cash. And those are your items that you're going to enter every single transaction. At the beginning, it'll feel a little bit tedious, but it really doesn't take that long. And especially if you're doing it weekly, you'll just enter these items, and then the calculations do everything for you in terms of what's left. The other thing to note about carryovers, this only works if you have a buffer in savings, or in your checking account. So if you are spending $579, but you'd only budgeted for $271, and you don't really have any sort of buffer in your checking account, this could be a problematic month, because you're saying, well, gosh, I'm short by $300, dollars or whatever it is. So I highly recommend just having building up enough there in that checking account where you've got a little bit of fluctuation. So don't have it so that you're running right down to the wire. And this may take some time to build up. If you don't have a savings account or anything like that, then you have all those funds there, and you may need to call your insurance provider and say, hey, can I pay monthly? And sometimes that rate isn't as good, but if it helps for cash flow or not having like overdraft fees or anything like that, then that's a good step one. But if you're in a spot where you have enough in various accounts, just have a buffer in that checking account, so that when you do get hit with one of these months, say in January, and you're like, hey, I haven't actually earned the money that I've budgeted for, like it'll take me maybe 3 months of insurance budgeting to cover this number, then you've got that, and you're basically going to pay yourself back over the next few months when you're not spending $271 in February and in March. So something to keep in mind with the carryovers. But as soon as you're at that spot where you have a little bit of a buffer in that account, it's a really valuable tool to make sure that you can account for those and you can stay on track. So that is the carryover and savings, or the carryover piece. And then the savings category is right over here. That's another one. This is one where paying the house down, the monthly budget is $500, but it's more advantageous to actually plop down the whole annual amount of $6,000 up front, because it benefits the amortization schedule in there. So if you're in a spot to do that, then you would just spend the $6,000, and then you're just going to replenish the $500 every single month moving forward. Again, you could always just do it $500 per month as it comes in. So that's why these categories are split out that way. And then the final tab here is the year-end balances. And I found this is just a nice progress tracker. So at the end of the year, you'll have different amounts in various accounts. Typically we've had, 4 different accounts here with like a primary checking, a rainy day checking, short-term and long-term savings. And then you will just add to those over time as you save and invest. And then you can track your investments too. I don't have that in the budget sheet because this is just kind of those cash accounts. But this is a nice way to get to the end of the year, maybe have some extra in the primary checking. You're like, we don't really need this much as a buffer, so we're just going to move more of that to deep savings. So like in any of these examples, you may say, hey, we don't actually need that extra buffer in there. Like, let's transfer $5,000 over into deep savings from here. Let's transfer, $10,000 from this one over to deep savings. So you kind of reset your accounts at the end of the year. Make sure you have a buffer in this account for those carryovers, and then keep on rolling. And then you can kind of see your increases year over year. All right, so let's talk about how to adjust this and kind of maintain it month over month. And then we'll wrap with moving forward into the future as earnings go up, and kind of talk about that. So step one, figure out what you've got to work with, figure out your categories, put in all your numbers, and then you're going to track along with this. So you're going to enter every transaction. At the end of the first month, you're going to go and you're going to look at shopping and go 130. Okay, we hit it. Food. Okay, we were over. Eating out, we were over. And then gas, we were under. So you might look at a month or two and you go, gosh, we're consistently under on shopping. We're always over on food. Maybe we should shift some of those dollars over here. Obviously, at the end of the month, like this one came out where we were under budget by $971. So we were under here, we were over here, we were over here. And so it all worked out with some of those non-carryover items. But the goal is to be as close to accurate as possible. And so what you'll end up doing over those first few months is just adjusting these numbers and saying, gosh, we really need a little bit more in food and eating out, but we don't need as much in some of these other areas. Let's swap some dollars. So that's the adjustment period as you move through setting this up and getting it going. The next phase is really as you want to increase some of these areas, increase lifestyle. So maybe you got a raise this year. Here's how we approached it. Obviously, do whatever makes sense for you, but I really found that this approach worked really well. At the beginning of the year, we set the budget. Typically, it was in December. We'd be closing out, the prior year, and we'd say, okay, this is our budget for this year. We'd make a couple of adjustments, and then we're off to the races. Maybe you get a raise in May. And so now your paycheck number is different. So if we go back here and you look at that multiplication, you're going, oh, now we've got more to work with. We actually didn't change the budget. We'd say, hey, I got a raise. All that money just went into more saving or more investments for the rest of the year. Because we figure, hey, that's 7 months of dedicated increased savings and investing. We already planned this year how it is. And so we just committed to the budget. And then at the end of the year, we said, okay, here was the increase. And whatever that increase was, we would split the difference. Half of that generally went to more saving and investing, and then half of it went to increasing lifestyle. So we might say, hey, we want to spend more on travel this year, or it'd be really nice to buy a couple more things. So we'd increase shopping a little bit, or whatever it was that we wanted. But again, you're being intentional with those dollars. And as you grow your income, you're always dedicating half of it to your future self, saving and investing, and half of it to your current self. Let's have some more fun. And I'm all about trying to find that right balance in the now, because you want to enjoy, you want to grow, you want to live currently, but you also want to think about your future self and setting yourself up for success down the road. 50-50 worked really well for us in terms of those increases. You can find your own percentages that work for you and what feel good. And sometimes you may just say, gosh, I'm just over budget on too many categories and I'm just not finding a way. And so you get that increase. You might say, hey, I'm only going to put 10% of my raise towards saving and investing, and I need the rest for lifestyle. And then as you earn more over time, that percentage may change. So you don't have to stick to the same thing all the time. So that is how I like to approach committing to the budget and then adjusting it when you get more earnings. And then we applied that to various things. Like if you get birthday money, again, you could just say that, hey, I'm just blowing it all because I got it and I wasn't counting on it. Or you could take the 50-50 approach or whatever. But kind of that, found money, we just applied the same methodology to that. So at the end of the day, this is, I feel like, one of the most foundational and critical skills, which is building the budget. Hopefully this video did a good job, at least breaking down how you get started, figuring out what you have to work with, figuring out your own categories, entering it for yourself, customizing it, and then the critical items of maintaining it over time and then adjusting it. It doesn't have to stay flat. You can work with those numbers, and it's just important to know what you have to work with, where the money is going, and then it becomes really easy to make those modifications year over year as you earn more or spend more in certain areas or spend less in certain areas. And it really gets you to think about very intentionally, hey, we're spending this money here. Do either of us even like this that much? Or why are we doing that? Or gosh, we loved that trip. Like, I would love to do 2 trips next year. Can we cut in some other areas that we don't care about? Skinny those up and add more to the travel budget. And so I find that it just gives you a lot more out of your current life and your lifestyle when you're thinking about those numbers. So with that being said, I will wrap this up. We'll have the link below to this document, and you can make a copy and do whatever you want with it. Customize it to your own situation, and hopefully this helped. All right, guys, hopefully you enjoyed that video on how to create your own budget, set it up, and maintain it moving forward. Again, I think this is absolutely a critical skill that people need to, even if you don't master it, you need to understand it, you need to implement it in some regard for yourself. Because let's face it, we all deal with money every single day, every week, every month. We all are taking money in and we're spending money out. And the more you can understand about how that's working for yourself and where those dollars are going, you can have all the control you want when you say, I'm going to direct those dollars in the exact places that I want them to go. And if I don't like where they're going, I can make some changes. I can live somewhere else. I can house hack. I can lower my cable bill. I can do all kinds of things. I can eliminate things that I don't need for my life. I can spend more in the areas that I love. And so that's why I really love this topic. And it allows you to start building those foundational investments and assets that are eventually going to replace your income, so that when you've built up enough real estate, stocks, crypto, whatever your assets are, those are going to be flowing income back to you. And that can actually replace your job income or just add to it if you love what you're doing and you just want to grow your lifestyle, experience more, travel more, spend more on your hobbies, whatever that may be. It all starts with a budget. So get out there, download the spreadsheet. And if this was helpful or you feel like somebody you know could benefit from this, please pass this along, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time here on Growth Mode.